Imagine waking up every single morning. No alarm clock, no stiffness in your joints, no foggy brain, just clear eyes, a sharp mind, and genuine excitement for the day ahead. Now imagine doing that at 102 years old. That is not a fantasy. That is the real documented life of people we have studied, interviewed, and followed for years here at the Dr. Alex Morgan Aging Wellness Lab. And today, I want to share something with you that most doctors and nutritionists are simply not talking about. Not because it is a secret, but because the answer is so surprisingly simple that people tend to dismiss it before they even try it. What if I told you that the single biggest predictor of whether you live past 100 with energy, with clarity, with independence is not your genetics, not your gym routine, not some expensive supplement stack. It is something sitting in your kitchen right now. It is the food on your plate 3 times a day, every single day. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear is going to completely change the way you think about aging, food, and your future. Before we go any further, if you are new here, welcome to the Dr. Alex Morgan Aging Wellness Lab. Hit that like button right now and subscribe, because every single week we break down the real science of aging in a way that is practical, honest, and actually useful. No hype, no selling you anything, just the truth. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you for being here. Seriously. Now let us get into this. So here's where this all started for me. A few years back, I was reviewing a case study that absolutely floored me. There was a woman, 104 years old, living independently in a small village in Sardinia, Italy. She walked to the market herself. She cooked her own meals. She remembered the names of every one of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all 26 of them. And when researchers sat down with her and asked the question everyone always asks, "What is your secret?" she did not say she ran marathons. She did not mention a pill or a powder. She pointed to her kitchen and smiled. She talked about food. Simple food. The same food she had been eating since she was a child. And the fascinating thing is, when researchers compared her dietary patterns with those of other centenarians across completely different parts of the world, Japan, Greece, Costa Rica, even certain pockets of California, the overlaps were remarkable. Not identical, but deeply consistent in their core principles. And that is exactly what we are going to unpack today. Now, before I walk you through these specific foods, I want to give you some important context, because this is where most longevity content gets it wrong. They give you a list. Eat this, do not eat that. But a list without context is just noise. The real power is in understanding why these foods work, what they are doing inside your body at the cellular level. Because once you understand that, you start making choices automatically. You do not need willpower, you just need understanding. So let us build that understanding together. The first thing you need to know is what actually kills longevity. It is not old age itself. That might sound strange, but hear me out. The research is overwhelmingly clear that what shortens life and destroys quality of life as we age is not the passage of time. It is chronic inflammation. Inflammation is your immune system's response to threat. Short term, it is life-saving. Your body uses it to fight infections, heal wounds, respond to stress. But when inflammation becomes chronic, and when it is running low grade in the background every single day, it begins to destroy your body from the inside. It damages blood vessels. It accelerates the breakdown of brain tissue. It disrupts hormone production. It interferes with cellular repair. Every major age-related disease you can think of, heart disease, Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes, cancer, arthritis, all of them have chronic inflammation as a root driver. So the foods that extend life are almost universally foods that fight chronic inflammation, and the foods that shorten life are almost universally foods that cause it. That is the lens through which everything else in today's video makes sense. The second concept you need is something called oxidative stress. Every time your cells produce energy, which is constantly, billions of times per second, they generate a byproduct called free radicals. These are unstable molecules that, if left unchecked, damage your DNA, your cell membranes, and the proteins your body needs to function. Your body has natural defenses against this, antioxidants, but as you age, the production of those defenses slows down. And if your diet is not supplying enough external antioxidants, the damage accumulates over years and decades. This is one of the primary drivers of biological aging. Not chronological aging, biological aging. Two people can both be 60 years old, and one of them has the biological markers of a 45-year-old, and the other has the markers of a 70-year-old. Diet is one of the biggest factors that separates them. This is not theory. This is measurable, observable, reproducible science. And the third concept, and this one is newer, more exciting, and in my opinion, the most underappreciated, is the gut-brain longevity axis. We now know that the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive system, collectively called your microbiome, do not just help you digest food. They produce neurotransmitters. They regulate your immune system. They influence your mood, your sleep, your inflammation levels, and even your cognitive function. Research published in the last decade has found stunning differences between the gut microbiomes of centenarians and those of people who die in their 70s and 80s. The long-lived group consistently had more diverse, more robust microbial communities, and a big part of what fed those communities was their diet. So when we talk about foods that promote longevity, we are also talking about foods that feed the right bacteria in your gut. Keep that in mind as we move through this list. All right, let us talk about actual foods now. And I want you to really listen here, because each one of these is backed by serious science and also by the lived experiences of people who have actually crossed the century mark. The first food category, and probably the most consistently documented across every longevity culture in the world, is legumes. Beans, lentils, chickpeas, fava beans. These humble, inexpensive, often overlooked foods appear in the diets of nearly every documented long-lived population on Earth. The Okinawans eat soy in various forms: miso, tofu, edamame, every single day. The Sardinians eat fava beans and chickpeas. In Nicoya, Costa Rica, black beans are a daily staple. In Loma Linda, California, one of the healthiest communities in the United States, the longest living residents are Seventh-day Adventists who eat a largely plant-based diet centered heavily on legumes. Now why? What is it about beans? First, they are extraordinarily rich in soluble fiber, the kind that feeds beneficial gut bacteria, slows the absorption of sugar into your bloodstream, and directly reduces inflammation markers in the blood. Second, they are a dense source of protein without the inflammatory compounds found in processed red meats. Third, they contain resistant starch, which acts as fuel for the microbiome in a way few other foods can match. And fourth, and this blew my mind when I first read the research, studies have found that every 10 grams of legumes you add to your daily diet is associated with roughly an 8% reduction in mortality risk across all causes. 8% from a bowl of lentil soup. That is not a small thing. Now let us talk about something that surprised even me when I started digging into the centenarian research: fermented foods, not in supplement form, actual traditional fermented foods. Things like plain yogurt with live cultures, kefir, fermented cabbage, miso paste, and in some cultures, fermented fish or soy. The connection between fermentation and longevity goes back thousands of years, long before we understood the microbiome. But now we understand the mechanism. Fermented foods deliver live beneficial bacteria directly into your gut. They also produce short-chain fatty acids during the fermentation process, compounds that reduce intestinal inflammation, strengthen the gut lining, and communicate anti-inflammatory signals to the rest of the body. One of the most striking findings from recent microbiome research was a Stanford study that compared people who ate a high-fiber diet with people who ate a high-fermented food diet. The fermented food group showed measurable decreases in inflammatory markers across the board, even more dramatically than the fiber group in the short term. Now, both are important, but fermented foods specifically seem to have a rapid, powerful effect on the immune system and inflammation levels. The centenarians we study at Dr. Alex Morgan Aging Wellness Lab consistently report eating some form of fermented food daily, and most of them have been doing so their entire lives without thinking of it as a health practice. It was just food. It was just how they ate. Here's another one that is going to make a lot of sense once I frame it correctly, and that is olive oil. Specifically high-quality extra virgin olive oil. The Mediterranean diet has been studied more extensively than almost any other dietary pattern on Earth, and olive oil is consistently identified as one of its most protective elements. But here is what most people do not know. Olive oil is not just a fat, it is a pharmacological compound. The primary phenolic compound in extra virgin olive oil, called oleocanthal, has been shown in laboratory studies to inhibit the same inflammatory enzymes as ibuprofen, same pathway, without the side effects. On top of that, olive oil is rich in oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat that reduces LDL oxidation, meaning it helps prevent the kind of cholesterol damage that leads to arterial plaque and heart disease. And the polyphenols in olive oil have been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier and directly protect neurons from oxidative damage. Now here is the key nuance, and this is important: not all olive oil is created equal. A lot of what is sold in supermarkets as extra virgin olive oil has been adulterated, diluted, or improperly stored and has lost most of its active compounds. The centenarians in Sardinia and Greece are not using the cheap stuff. They are using fresh, locally pressed, minimally processed oil. When you buy olive oil, look for a harvest date on the bottle, not just an expiration date, and use it within a year of harvest. That is when the polyphenols are most potent. Now I want to spend some time on a food group that is wildly underestimated in most Western diets, and that is dark leafy greens. Spinach, kale, collard greens, Swiss chard, arugula, dandelion greens. These are among the most nutrient-dense foods on Earth relative to their caloric content. And when you look at the research on specific compounds in leafy greens, the longevity connection becomes undeniable. They are rich in folate, which is critical for DNA repair and methylation, a process that regulates gene expression and plays a massive role in how your cells age. They contain lutein and zeaxanthin, which protect the eyes and brain from oxidative damage. They are loaded with vitamin K2 precursors, which help direct calcium to your bones rather than your arteries. And they are one of the best dietary sources of nitrates, not the synthetic kind you find in processed meats, but natural nitrates that your body converts to nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a molecule that relaxes and widens your blood vessels, improves circulation, and directly reduces blood pressure. For aging adults, diminished nitric oxide production is one of the primary drivers of cardiovascular decline. The solution is sitting in a bag of spinach. One of the most fascinating things I have observed in studying people who live past 100 is their relationship with nuts and seeds. Almost universally, they eat them regularly. Not in huge quantities, usually a small handful per day, but consistently. Walnuts in particular have an extraordinary body of research behind them. Multiple large-scale studies, including the famous Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, both out of Harvard, have linked regular walnut consumption to significant reductions in heart disease risk, cognitive decline, and all-cause mortality. Walnuts are one of the only plant foods that contain a meaningful amount of ALA omega-3 fatty acids, which reduce inflammation and support brain health. They also contain L-glutathione, which are transformed by gut bacteria into compounds called urolithins. And urolithins have been shown in recent research to activate mitophagy, which is your body's process for clearing out damaged mitochondria and replacing them with healthy ones. That is essentially cellular anti-aging at the most fundamental level. Almonds, flax seeds, chia seeds, and pumpkin seeds all have their own impressive profiles too. But if there is one nut that stands out in the longevity literature, it is the walnut. Let us talk about something that a lot of people in the wellness space overcomplicate, and that is whole grains. Not refined grains, whole grains. Oats, barley, farro, bulgur, millet, brown rice, and ancient grains like amaranth and teff. The centenarians of Okinawa traditionally ate purple sweet potato as their primary carbohydrate. Sardinians eat a specific type of flatbread made from whole grain durum wheat that has a very low glycemic index. What all of these have in common is that they provide slow-burning energy, substantial fiber, and a range of B vitamins and minerals that support energy metabolism, nervous system function, and cellular repair. The fiber in whole grains, particularly beta-glucan found in oats and barley, has been studied extensively for its effects on cholesterol, blood sugar regulation, and gut health. The evidence is consistent and strong. One of the most practical things any person watching this video can do starting today is swap out refined grain products, white bread, white rice, white pasta, for their whole grain counterparts. The flavor adjustment takes about 2 weeks. After that, most people prefer the whole grain version, and your biology will thank you for decades. Now, I want to address something that does not get nearly enough attention in longevity conversations, and that is the role of herbs and spices. I know that sounds small. I know it sounds like a footnote, but the research on specific culinary herbs and spices is genuinely stunning, and the centenarians I have studied consistently use them generously and daily. Turmeric, and specifically its active compound curcumin, is probably the most studied spice in the world. Thousands of peer-reviewed studies have documented its anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, neuroprotective, and anti-cancer properties. The challenge with curcumin is absorption. It is not easily absorbed by the body on its own, but when combined with black pepper, which contains piperine, absorption increases by up to 2,000%. That is why in traditional Indian cooking, turmeric and black pepper almost always appear together. It is ancient wisdom confirmed by modern biochemistry. Rosemary contains carnosic acid, which has been shown to protect the brain from free radical damage and may reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Garlic contains allicin and other sulfur compounds that lower blood pressure, reduce cholesterol, and have potent antimicrobial effects. Ginger has powerful anti-inflammatory properties and supports digestive health. These are not exotic supplements. They are things you can put in your food tonight. I also want to talk about berries because they deserve their own dedicated attention. Blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, and in particular, a lesser-known but extraordinary berry called the bilberry. These are among the most antioxidant-rich foods on the planet. The compounds that give berries their deep color, anthocyanins, are the same ones that fight oxidative stress, reduce inflammation, and cross the blood-brain barrier to directly protect neurons. Research from the University of Cincinnati found that older adults with mild cognitive impairment who consumed blueberry powder daily for 16 weeks showed measurable improvements in memory and learning. Another study from Tufts University found that blueberries fed to aging laboratory animals actually reversed some age-related motor and cognitive deficits. We are talking about a food that can literally reverse markers of aging in the brain. And fresh or frozen, the nutritional profile is essentially identical. So frozen berries are a completely practical and affordable option. Here's something I want to be very direct about, because I think it matters. The foods I am describing today are not magic. They do not work because of one molecule or one pathway. They work because of synergy, because the combination of fiber, antioxidants, healthy fats, fermented foods, and phytonutrients creates an internal environment in your body where inflammation is low, the microbiome is thriving, cells are repairing efficiently, and the biological machinery of aging is running at its best. The centenarians we study at Dr. Alex Morgan, Aging Wellness Lab, are not following complicated protocols. They are not tracking macros or taking 16 supplements. They are eating real food. They are eating the same foods their grandparents ate. And they are doing it consistently, joyfully, and without anxiety. That last part matters more than most people realize, because chronic stress and the cortisol it produces is one of the most powerful drivers of inflammation and accelerated aging. The relationship with food matters as much as the food itself. One more thing I want to address before we get toward the end of this, and that is water. Specifically, hydration as a longevity factor. This seems obvious, but it is massively underappreciated. As we age, our thirst mechanism becomes less reliable. We genuinely feel less thirsty even when our bodies are dehydrated. And chronic low-grade dehydration accelerates cognitive decline, reduces kidney function, impairs cellular repair, and makes every inflammatory process worse. The centenarians I have interviewed almost universally drink water throughout the day. Not sports drinks, not sodas, not excessive amounts of juice. Water, and often herbal teas, which add additional polyphenols and anti-inflammatory compounds to their daily intake. One of the simplest and most impactful habits you can build starting today is keeping a large glass of water somewhere you will see it when you wake up and drinking it before you do anything else. Hydrate before you caffeinate. Your brain, your kidneys, and your cardiovascular system will function measurably better for the rest of the day. Now, I want to bring this all together with something practical, because I know information without a clear action path is just entertainment. So let me tell you exactly what a longevity-focused day of eating actually looks like in practice. In the morning, something like rolled oats with blueberries, a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, and a small handful of walnuts. That is fiber, omega-3s, antioxidants, and resistant starch all in one bowl. Midday, a large salad with dark leafy greens, chickpeas or lentils, colorful vegetables, and a generous drizzle of extra virgin olive oil with lemon. Add some fermented food on the side, a small portion of plain yogurt or a spoonful of sauerkraut. In the evening, a cooked meal with whole grains, more vegetables, and either legumes or a clean protein source. Season everything generously with turmeric, garlic, black pepper, rosemary, or whatever combination you enjoy. Snack on fresh or frozen berries and a small handful of nuts if you are hungry between meals. Drink water and herbal tea throughout the day. That is it. That is the template. It is not restrictive, it is not expensive, it is not complicated, and done consistently over months and years, the research says clearly and strongly that it will reduce your risk of every major age-related disease and increase your chances of not just living longer, but living better. One thing I find deeply moving about the people who reach 100 and beyond is that they are not just alive, they are present. They laugh, they are curious, they care about things, they have opinions, they enjoy their food, they have community, and I do not think that is a coincidence. I think the same biological conditions that support longevity, low inflammation, a healthy microbiome, well-nourished brain cells, stable blood sugar, also support mood, motivation, and emotional engagement with life. Your brain is made of what you eat. Your energy comes from what you eat. Your capacity to feel joy, to think clearly, to remember the people you love, all of it is deeply, undeniably connected to the food on your plate. That is not a guilt trip. That is an invitation. An invitation to look at your next meal as an opportunity, not a restriction. I want to close with something that a 101-year-old man in Costa Rica told me when I asked him if he ever worried about his health. He smiled and said he never counted the years he had left. He only counted the meals, and in every meal, he put something good, something real, and something made with care. I think there is more wisdom in that sentence than in most longevity textbooks I have ever read. If this video gave you something valuable today, a new idea, a new perspective, a real piece of science you can actually use, please do me a favor and leave a comment below. Tell me which food surprised you the most, or share which one you are going to start adding to your meals this week. I read every comment, and I genuinely love hearing from you. And if you know someone who is thinking about their health, who is dealing with low energy, or who just wants to age better, please share this video with them. It costs nothing to share, but it could genuinely change how someone approaches the next decade of their life. That is what this channel is for. That is what Dr. Alex Morgan Aging Wellness Lab is built on. Real science, real people, and real results. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about your health, and I will see you in the next one.